You're listening to Two Chunks in a Hunk, a movie podcast where we give pumps and dumps.
Just the two of us. We can make it if we try. Just the two of us.
Hello and welcome to Two Chunks in a Hunk. My name is Jordan Wonders, and this week I'm your chunk.
I'm Doge, and I'm going to call you Chunktonio Banderas.
Yeah, absolutely. Wait, where's our hunk for the week?
Shrunk down real itty bitty between the molecules of
In
our
the
podcast.
quantum zone.
He's gone.
Well, yeah, that's right. In case you're confused, you're listening to the first ever Two Chunks in a Hunk episode where it's only the two chunks.
And just like you, we hope that this is the last.
Similar to you, we are also deeply frightened.
Just to give you a peek behind the curtain, Jordan and I are sitting completely alone by ourselves.
But in our normal spots.
So we are sitting right next to each other. And I keep having to turn my head to talk to you.
I keep waiting to look directly across the table at Carter, and there is no Carter today.
You've been shrunk down. Really itty bitty.
Quantum zone. No. I think that it would be helpful before we move too far with this particular episode to decide if we were going to be like a bug-based superhero that wasn't Spider-Man or Ant-Man, like what the bug would be.
What the bug, dude?
What the bug, dude?
Welcome to a new segment of Two Chunks Only called What the Bug?
What the
in which
bug?
we decide what bug would we be?
Let's do it.
With like so ants and wasps and spiders are out.
Yeah. Yep.
A bug-based superhero and his power set. Easy. Rhinocerous-Beetle-Man.
Okay.
The strongest nose in the whole world.
Such a bad name for a superhero, though.
His name is RBM. Rhinoceros-Beetle-Man. And his costume looks exactly like the rhino from Spider-Man. And he just has a big horn, but he also has two pinchers.
Sure.
They're decorative, purely
Sure.
decorative, but
Do
he's
nothing.
very strong. And he can roll a ball of poop just with his big roll. He's a dung beetle man. Rhinoceros-Dung-Beetle-Man.
Yeah.
That's me.
Excellent. So you're combining two species.
It's bug fusion. It's the latest cutting edge science.
Okay.
Bug fusion.
Okay, excellent. I would be I'd be Skeet-O,
Okay.
the mosquito man.
Yeah, I got that one.
Named Skeet-O.
Skeet-O.
And my main form of attack would just be flying nostrils first directly into my enemies and draining them of all life force.
Nice.
But like,
do you get
so
their
frequently.
Do you get their powers are you like Kirby essentially? Do you get their powers?
Yeah,
whenever you drain
I'm
them?
Kirby, but I suck it out of them instead of swallowing them whole. And it really, if you count blood as superpowers, then yeah, I do get their
okay.
powers. Otherwise, no, I don't. I just get their blood.
So you have described yourself as precision vampire Kirby.
Skeet-O. Yep.
Awesome. That's incredible. If our voices sound a little bit different,
Yeah.
it's just to be candid with everyone listening to this podcast. It is a dumpster fire here at Two Chunks HQ.
Yeah.
Our third host got shrunk down real itty bitty.
Quantum realm.
We both are dealing with some sort of throat situation right now.
Situations right now.
That is not going to stop us from talking about the movie that we know you've been waiting for.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that movie, of course, is called
Ant-Man and the Wasp.
And now I do want to be clear. It might keep us from doing a good job.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But we're going to do a job.
We're going to, and when you listen to this, you'll be sure to say, well, that was an episode.
That was roughly 42 an hour of my life. So Doge, as we jump into this movie, would you be so kind as to hit me and our listeners with a synopsis?
I will be exactly that kind and not one kindness more or less. Ant-Man and the Wasp continues the story of Scott Lang. He is on house arrest now. He's taken that as kind of a plea deal in exchange for not going to jail,
Sure,
I guess.
sure.
Yeah.
As plea deals tend
to be. And this is just going to turn into a legal podcast where we talk about the ins and outs of plea deals.
I know jail.
Yeah. He doesn't like jail, so he doesn't want to do it.
Sure.
He's on house arrest, and basically he gets called into action whenever Hope Van Dyne and Hank Pym begin anew kind of their search for Janet, Hank's lost wife, who has been trapped in the quantum realm since like the 60s, I guess?
Yeah, it's been a little bit.
Like Cold War
Probably
era.
not 60s. That's 50 years, right?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, it was Cold War era, maybe 70s. We'll say 70s.
Early 80s, potentially.
Or 90s, or could be 2000s.
It was yesterday.
There's a lot of decades.
It's really all been quick.
So she's been trapped in the quantum realm. And when Scott returned from the quantum realm in Ant-Man 1, it kind of was a new surge of hope for Hank in the search for his wife. Along the way, they are thwarted by Ghost. She's a new character that we haven't met before. She,
Yep.
I don't know if it's a power so much as a disability, but she is intangible most of the time.
Yeah,
like she phases through
highly blinky.
stuff. Blinky, exactly.
Yeah.
Like the ghost from Pac-Man.
Yeah.
That's why her name is Ghost, actually, because she's blinky.
She's blinky like the ghosts.
And they're aided by Bill Foster, formerly a size-changing superhero known as Goliath. He was a colleague of Hank Pym in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, whatever decade you choose. And so working together, our group of heroes manages to retrieve Janet from the quantum realm and then continue their very happy existence because nobody's totally going to snap their fingers.
Yep. Right.
And we should say right here, obviously spoilers for Ant-Man and the Wasp, but if somehow still you listen to our podcast but haven't seen Infinity War, we're going to end up spoiling that in this episode. So just be warned.
I would just go ahead and say if you haven't seen Infinity War, like don't go outside also.
Yeah, stay off the internet. Don't watch the news. And you're going to have a bad time. If you care
about spoilers and haven't seen Infinity War, just like...
Then you don't care about spoilers.
Yeah, don't do anything because it's going to get spoiled for you without a doubt.
Yep. Well, enough talking about this movie.
Let's talk about this movie. Okay, great. Right off the bat, first things first, we've got a little flashback sequence that we kind of open up with.
Sure do.
We're looking at Janet and Hank on their way out the door for their
Jank, actually. Their couple names.
Yeah, their couple names. So we're looking at Jank saying goodbye to Hope, little child Hope, before they go to their fateful mission where Janet would phase through the missile.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that this is probably the best example of Marvel's really the only people doing this right now, but
doing it well, especially.
They do it at almost every movie. I feel like where they de-age actors.
Yeah,
and it's particularly difficult with actors like Michael Douglas and Michelle Pfeiffer.
Who are so well known.
We know what they used to look like,
yeah.
But I think you were probably about to say this, but
this is the best use of that technology that I have seen in a movie to this point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Young Michael Douglas, young Michelle Pfeiffer look unbelievable.
I was getting some Billy Magnuson vibes from young Michael Douglas. Like he looked a lot like, and I don't remember if actual young Michael Douglas looked as much like B-Mag, but he really did in this one.
Interesting. I could see that. Young Michelle Pfeiffer was unsettling to me. Like how
it was
similar
unbelievable.
Yeah.
It looked like they filmed it 30 years ago.
Yeah. It was very strange to see. And it kind of makes me anxious for what we're going to be able to do with that technology moving forward.
Well, I don't know if you've read the rumor, but they're reportedly doing that to Sam Jackson.
For the entire movie.
De-aging him 25 years so the movie can take place in the early 90s.
Which, I mean, who knows how much he will actually have screen time in that movie, but I would imagine it's a good bit.
I heard he's like a main character.
Yeah.
But
it's going to be interesting.
That's another movie. Sure. We're talking about Ant-Man and the Wasp.
And then sort of the very next thing we get after this opening flashback sequence is, of course, our new fantastic Marvel 10-year intro sequence.
Yeah.
Which I really like.
Yeah, it's good.
I think it's cool. I'm going to be sad to see it go and move on to other
it's their same title sequence. Like they've had that title sequence. It just doesn't turn into the red 10.
I like the red 10 though. It makes me happy.
Well, we can't always get what we want, but we just might find that
and
we get what we need.
The hints this movie. You want to sort of talk about what happens next with Scott and his daughter?
Sure. Yeah. It's honestly, this was a contender for my super pump.
Same. Yeah.
Because this is the sweetest scene I've ever seen in a very long time.
Yeah.
Like he's at home with his daughter and they're playing heist essentially.
Yeah.
And it's very, very sweet. The relationship between Scott and Cassie continues to be a highlight of the Ant-Man franchise.
Even in this movie.
Oh my gosh, so much better. And I think it's just because Cassie's older and able to act a little bit more.
Sure. And same with Paul Rudd. He's a little bit older.
He's a little older. He's really been practicing.
Oh man. And speaking of, Paul Rudd is, I mean, as always, so good.
Yeah, I feel comfortable, even though Carter's not here, I feel comfortable setting policy for Two Chunks and a Hunk that Paul Rudd is going to be a standing pump of all time. Paul Rudd, to me, rounds out the holy trifecta of the Order of Jason. And by that, of course, I do mean Jason Bateman and Jason Sudeikis. And Paul Rudd is the secret third Jason.
Yeah.
Because these three men, anytime they do anything, I'm guaranteed to love it.
Kind of toss in Jason Segel for me a little bit.
Yeah.
I do love his work.
I think Paul is a better Jason than Jason Segel, though.
I think Paul is a better Jason than all of them.
He's the truest Jason.
The real Jason will be revealed.
Yeah.
But it's Paul.
Paul is the truest
Just so
Jason.
everybody knows. And our big Jason boy in this movie,
Jason Rudd, my favorite actor.
Jason Paul Rudd, really does knock it out of the park in this movie. I mean, like as a father figure, as a superhero, and as just sort of the audience. Maybe the word would be like a parallel for the audience.
Yeah, he's a surrogate.
For us to also go, yeah, I don't understand this science talk. Like, he is so perfect in his confusion.
Yeah, he's really great.
The beginning of this movie is pretty quick.
Yeah,
Pretty
and I do want to
fast-paced.
take a dump on that. We've talked about at different points in the show, we've talked about moments where you can see the bones of a story.
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, we really didn't put enough to disguise the motion of the plot here.
Yeah.
Like, it opens with a voiceover of Hank being like, maybe we can find your mom again, Hope.
Right.
And it's like, okay, that's what the movie's going to be about. You know what I mean? Like, I'm all for, like, definitely set it up in the beginning. Tell me what the movie's going to be about. But it doesn't have to be like, hey, thanks for coming into our theater today. I know you've just started Ant-Man and the Wasp. Here's just a quick intro about what this movie's going to be about.
Hi, it's me, Michael Douglas. Today we're going to be going on a search for Hope's mother. Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that is it was actually almost my super dump was the pacing
Really?
of this movie.
Really?
It is, in my opinion, one of the weakest points about this movie is just like the beginning and the end happened so quickly and so rapidly.
Yeah.
And the middle of this movie felt like it was about an hour and a half.
The middle of the movie felt right to me, though. Like, once we got past that weird little hiccup in the beginning, and like, if we can just pull the ejector cord and parachute out of the plane right before it lands, I feel like it's a great movie in the middle.
See, I actually fundamentally disagree with that.
Really?
I feel like the middle was the sloppiest portion of the movie.
Really?
Yeah, I really do.
Okay, well, let's get to the middle.
Yeah,
Explain that.
Let's leave the beginning in our dust a little bit.
I mean, basically, it just catches us up on all of our characters in a really kind of clunky way.
Right.
But they're Scott and his buddies own a security company called XCon.
Yeah.
And they're trying to land a big deal. And Scott's on house arrest. And Hank and Hope are looking for Janet.
Right. And so I would, and maybe what we're seeing here is that we're coming to a disagreement on what classifies the middle of this movie.
Okay.
Because for me, the middle of this would be from about right after they have their first meeting with Walton Goggins' character.
Yeah.
All the way up roughly until maybe they start to kind of come up with their own separate plan for how to get their building back.
That is exactly what I'm defining as a middle of the
Really?
movie.
Yeah.
So
So
I think that works really well. I think like if you pick it up at Hope's meeting, and like that's our cold open is Hope meeting with Walton Goggins. Start with that and then backfill all the details. We don't need all the setup before that.
Sure.
And then to me, I don't feel like it gets sloppy again until the very end when we get back from the quantum realm.
See, I actually feel like maybe what is happening here is that for me, I was more interested in the movie that was being set up in the first 30-ish minutes than I was in the movie that was presented to me for the middle hour.
Okay.
Now, if the first 30 minutes didn't exist, I think I'd probably agree with you. But to me, this movie, I mean, they set up this awesome idea of Ant-Man, of Scott having to find a way to keep the FBI at bay while he is under house arrest at his house. But really, I mean, we find out that it's so easy for him to just return home.
That's not the story of the movie.
Yeah, I know.
And that's what you wanted to see that story?
Well, I wanted that to be a big part is no matter, like he's constantly worried about how far he's going because it's going to take him that much longer to get back, or he's constantly doing these things. Like that was set up as such a big thing, but it ended up just being this punchline where he could seemingly teleport back home at any given time.
Yeah.
without really any regard for how far away he was from home to begin with.
Yeah.
Which bothered me a lot.
Well, as the ant flies, nothing is more than a minute
Sure.
away.
Right.
I had that a bit of extra-textual knowledge coming into this.
Sure, and that might have been helpful to me too. But I think that, along with, I think I actually wanted to see more of Father Scott.
Really?
Yeah, and a little less separation. I think I could have done with more FaceTime with his daughter
Cassie.
and maybe involving her more. Like, I got excited when Ghost around, I would call it the very end of Act 2, was like, I will. He has a daughter. I was like, yeah, here
Cassie.
we go.
Yeah.
Let's do. And nothing ever came of it. Which, don't get me wrong, it's not like I love seeing children in danger. But
Well,
like,
that's what I heard you say.
well, yeah,
so.
I mean, that is me.
Yeah.
But like, I think that would have been seeing Scott have to actually deal with his daughter being in danger instead of just coming to a room and going, leave her alone, like he did last movie.
Yeah.
Seeing some growth in that protection. I don't know. I think
Maybe that's it though, because Scott shouldn't have been the protagonist of this story.
it was Hope.
Hope should have been the protagonist, but we set up Scott as the protagonist and we treat him like the protagonist, but he doesn't have the opportunity to grow in ways that protagonists need to be compelling.
Which is actually why, and I'm going to do it right here, right now, so that we can talk about it. But I'm going to go ahead and throw out my super dump for this movie.
Okay.
Which is actually the relationship between Scott and Hope.
Okay. Yeah.
Which is crazy because
Team Scope.
It was one of my favorite things from the first movie.
Yeah.
But man, it feels like there's nothing there.
It feels reductive in this movie.
There was chemistry. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
The two actors had chemistry, but it just felt like it was like, oh, we were so hot and heavy for a while, and then I went to Germany, and now you're mad at me, and you're still mad at me, but now we're good. But now I made another mistake, and you're mad, and now we're good again, and then that's our love story.
In particular, I feel like the scene in the school, like Hope just did too much of a 180 there. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah,
Actually,
and it was just very, like, with two actors as great as Paul Rudd and Evangeline Lilly, I feel like you could have gone a lot deeper.
Oh, yeah.
And again, it wasn't the lack of chemistry. It was just like, why? What was the point of them being mad? Like, it seemed like Hank and Hope being mad at Scott was just to give some first act conflict and first act reason they weren't together. But there's no
100%.
real reason for it.
100%. And I actually have a problem with this because like their anger at Scott feels totally unjustified. And it actually feels like they would be pretty psyched about him when you take into account Hank Pym's comments about the Starks.
Yeah.
Like Hank Pym has always talked about, in the first movie, he was talking about the Starks are trying to steal our tech. We can't trust the
So
Starks.
selfish.
Hate the
He's-
Starks. Ant-Man literally went to the airport to fight against Tony Stark.
Yeah. And to frankly fight for what it seems like Hank believes in.
Yeah.
And then after all of that, they're like, how could you what though? And I left the theater still confused.
Well, I mean, that's
What were
the
they
question
mad
then.
about?
Was the Ant-Man tech still a secret? At that point, like the world knew about it.
it couldn't have been because what's his butt went
Darren
public with it.
Darren Cross was going to go, yeah.
But even still, I feel like Hank and Hope are the type, have been up to this point presented as the type of people to go, you made the right call. That was tough.
Yeah,
Sorry.
it doesn't seem like necessarily a logical progression of
No.
any of our three leads from Ant-Man 1. And I think that's why, to me, that's why the beginning is such a weird hurdle, because we have to like, in the middle, they're different characters than they feel like they should have been.
Right.
And they don't get to grow into that organically because we just info dump at the beginning of the movie.
But I think that's actually why I liked the beginning, because the middle, because the middle to me was where it was like, and finally we're gonna hash this all out, and I was like, oh, that's all they're mad about.
Yeah.
And so I think it's not that the beginning was better written than the middle, so much as the middle is when it was revealed what had happened, and that was when I was like, oh, come on,
Yeah.
that's what you're mad about.
Yeah. And we kind of retread a lot of the same ground of them like, oh, we're so frustrated with Scott because he's just silly. He's a buffoon, but he's actually pretty capable and we're going to learn to trust him.
That, and like, I think maybe I'm getting tired of the quantum realm a little bit, not looking at it, but like, that was also the first movie's plot. Really?
And to be fair, that wasn't a big part of the first movie.
It wasn't, but it was the Chekhov's gun of the first movie.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
now
yeah.
it's just the Chekhov's in your face punch.
It's the Chekhov. It's the
Yeah,
Anton
it's
Chekhov
here we
from
go.
Star Trek. Yeah.
And so it was like, okay, let's see. And honestly, if I'm being real, I think I'm tired of Hank.
Really?
I think I've gotten hanked out a little bit.
Yeah. I don't know. I think there's a way to fix his character because it's an interesting and compelling character.
Agreed.
I don't get the sense that Michael Douglas particularly enjoys playing
Yeah.
this role.
Probably
He just
not.
Seems like Harrison Ford levels of old Grouch.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I think maybe we can let Hank retire with Janet to the beach, like at the end, and maybe
Or can we?
Yeah. It feels like maybe we should just let Hank and Hope carry the next installment if there is one. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Team Scope.
Really, let's let Hope carry the next installment.
Yeah. I mean, I think after seeing Ant-Man as a leading character in Ant-Man 1, and after seeing him in kind of a supporting character, like a B or C tier in terms of importance to the plot character in Civil War, I think he works better, just like Hulk. Like, one note, it's a really good note, but still it's only one, so it's tough to make him a protagonist. Yeah, I actually agree with that. It's funny that we agree on that, but have such opposite reads of what works and what doesn't work in this movie.
Yeah, and I think it's because ultimately, like, this movie was so much fun to watch. Like, it was hilarious. Like, I was dying laughing for a majority of this movie. And the humor was well done and expected because we've seen the first Ant-Man. And I think that's a result of, was it Peyton Reed coming back? Great job. Yeah. Like, and don't get me wrong, as sloppy as I feel like parts of this movie are, like, it was a ton of fun to watch. And like, the action was great.
It avoids the Guardians of the Galaxy 2 trap, though, which Guardians was like, what was the funniest joke in Guardians 1? We'll have that one in here 3 times.
Yeah.
And what was the top 10 funniest jokes? Great. That's our first 20 jokes. Yeah. Right. Like, I'm surprised that we only got one Luis story in this movie.
Yeah. And it was great.
And it was really good.
So much fun. And so, again, I think what it boils down to for this movie is, like, I think it just feels weird where it came.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, it does feel, and I think the most common critical response to this in reading reviews has been, this is a great palate cleanser for the MCU. Yeah. And it reminds me that these are fun and not a bummer. And now I'm ready to go see Avengers 4.
Yeah. And I totally get that. Yeah. For me, it just felt a little bit just like, and all these terrible things happened. Yeah. And then it was like, and this summer, don't forget your favorite pals.
Yeah, well,
Ant-Man.
To be fair, that's kind of how Ant-Man 1 ended.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Ant-Man 1 was in its placement because it was between Age of Ultron and Civil War.
Yeah,
and so we get that kind of. I don't know. I don't think these movies have to be that kind of like standalone adventure, but I did find myself like, just like in the first Ant-Man, I was watching that one going, okay, but what happened though? Like, this is great. This is fun. What happened because of Sokovia?
Yeah.
In this one, I found myself like, okay, great. This is fun. We all know how this is going to end.
Sure. Yeah.
What are they going to do about it?
Well, and I think it was actually fun that we got to see some like consequences for Civil War for somebody.
Yeah.
Like,
I did like that.
Some smaller scale consequences of just like, just like, hey, you're under house arrest, or we can like arrest you. Either one. Like, I think that was really fun. And I genuinely don't want to like sound like I'm dumping all over this movie because it had so many good parts.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
And I actually want to get to one of those good parts now, which is in that middle section, or like I would call it the beginning of maybe Act 2, talking with Walton Goggins. One of my favorite scenes in the movie, we finally get introduced to Ghost.
Yes.
Ghost is so cool.
Ghost is very, very cool. Ghost is a character from the comics that ever since I found out she was in this movie, I was so pumped.
Yeah, I don't think I'm familiar with that actress, but she was very good.
She was really good. And this is a power that I don't like. It's pretty amazing that, what are we, like 10, 15, maybe even 20? Geez. Years into the, we totally are 20 years into the superhero movie boom. Yeah. Because like 20 years ago, right? X-Men was late 90s. Was it early 2000s?
I think it was 2000 or 2001.
So we're almost 20 years into the superhero movie deal. And we haven't seen this power really.
Not done like this, especially. And I think the phasing powers were done very well.
How much did Ghost just look like a hunter from Destiny?
100%. Yeah. But I think that's why I was very into the costume. Because as much as I might be out on Destiny now, I'm still very in on the concept of hunters as a thing. Yeah. No, she looked so cool.
Yes.
Her powers were great. Like, fighting her is a nightmare because she can just literally phase through you.
What did you think about her turn at the end of the movie? Because I actually have a problem with Ghost's arc in this.
Well, so what I was actually going to say about Ghost is, as cool as she is, she's just kind of Darren Cross again.
Yep.
Where it's just like, we just need somebody to step up and be a villain. So if you wouldn't mind just being one, that would be really great for us.
I agree. She's got that weird turn at the end, which, I mean, maybe I can save this until we get there, but there's just a lot with Ghost in particular at the end of this movie that I am not a big fan of.
Yeah. Yeah.
So after we meet Ghost, we've got, I think the next like thing of note really is the school, right? When they break into Cassie's school. Let's just skip ahead to that. And they break into Cassie's school
I thoroughly enjoyed this scene in the movie.
This is my super pump.
Okay, cool.
The scene in the school when Scott's regulator is broken and so he's stuck at like toddler size.
Yeah, oh, it's so funny.
So good. But I also even just love like what we see about Cassie, the continuation that we see from the first Ant-Man where she is so proud of her dad.
Yeah,
she's so proud to be Scott's daughter.
Yeah.
And like even she wants to bring the trophy that she got him. She wants to bring that for show and tell.
Yeah. And
I think that's just really, really sweet.
Yeah. I agree.
But yeah, this is a really, really fun scene and I liked it a lot.
Tiny Paul Rudd was killing me.
Paulito.
I was dying pretty much for this entire scene, watching him skip down the steps to get down to the van and like climb up into his van seat.
Yeah.
And then I was particularly hungry while watching this movie. And so when Hank Pym offered juice box and string cheese. I literally, my first thought was, oh, that sounds great. And to which Paul Rudd immediately goes, do you actually have that? And I was like, oh man.
And see their reaction in this, like their relationship in this portion of the movie felt like a continuation of what we got in Ant-Man 1.
It did, because Hank felt less antagonistic.
Yes. But I don't know. It really does feel like at the beginning of this movie, we missed our exit. And so GPS rerouted us through some weird stuff. But now we're back on where these characters are supposed to be right now.
Yeah. Which is kind of what happened in the middle of this movie. I feel like just this like in and out of like, oh, we're kind of there. We're not really there. We're kind of there. We're not really there. Yeah. Again, that's sort of where the pacing issue falls apart for me, is in that middle area of this movie. Because shortly after this, we spend a long
we skipped over going to see Bill Foster.
Right. Yeah. Brother Larry.
Brother Larry. And he's back.
He is back. It's finally time for Perry Watch.
Welcome to Perry Watch.
We've got him. He's in our sights. Brother Larry Fishburne out from beyond the grave.
Bill Foster was almost my super pump.
Really?
And it's not at all because of anything that he does in this movie.
Because it's Lawrence Fishburne?
Because it's Lawrence Fishburne and because I love Bill Foster in the comics.
Right. Yeah, he was a little one note for me in this movie. Well, maybe like one note, if that one note drastically changed out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Which I had a big problem with. It was just like, I'm kind of angry at Hank, but I'm a bad dude now, but I'm not that bad of a dude. Oh, you're too bad for, like, it was just like, oh man.
Yeah. And I think that, so his arc is, I'm mad because Hank stepped on me. I'm going to help this girl that Hank stepped on. Hank's actually a good dude. And I don't think that third turn is ever earned.
No,
because I don't think any of our three leads grow or change in any way.
Well, and I do not think, and I think it's okay, but I do not think Hank is a good dude.
No.
I think it in fact has been established that he is a jerk.
Yeah.
And that the reason he hates Stark so much is because he basically is him.
Yeah.
And so like,
and that has a long history in the comics as well. Like Hank Pym is a trash person.
Yeah. I mean, it's the whole reason they set these movies about Scott.
Yeah.
And so it feels weird to try and pull Hank back into the spotlight for 2, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know, but I don't know how you do this movie without him.
Just don't do all of the quantum realm stuff. Like,
so this movie shouldn't have been about go save Janet.
I think it could have been. I don't really know what bearing that has for any of us. And I think that's a big problem for me that I have with this movie, is like, I think that if this movie had been about somebody trying to get their hands on Pym Tech again for the second time, but this time they have the help of somebody with drastically different superpowers, then I feel like I could have gotten on board with maybe Scott and Hope on the run in some way, on the road, trying to get away from this constantly pursuing, constantly one step in front of them person, which being Ghost.
Yeah.
But instead it just felt like, let's take a big old romp around the West Coast and go back to the quantum realm again. Like, I don't know. I think
this movie, because of the way it's set up in the first Ant-Man, this movie has to be about saving Janet. But I don't think that Scott needs to be in this movie. Like, honestly, I'm stoked that Paul Rudd was in this, and I'm definitely not going back on our new standing policy of standing pump of Paul Rudd. But I think that this movie could have been The Wasp. And Ant-Man has a supporting role, like has a cameo. But again, like I think that Evangeline Lilly should have been the protagonist.
Oh, I agree.
If we're telling the story of rescuing Janet,
right.
That's Hope's story. That's not Scott's story. Scott doesn't care.
I agree, which is why I don't think that's what this movie should have been about.
Okay.
Like I genuinely feel like I got to the point where I was just like, just go get her already. Holy moly. Like this is all, the first Ant-Man was a heist movie.
Yeah.
It had this fear of we're going to get caught. We're going to get caught. We're going to get caught. Because of the tie with the Avengers and the fact that their powers are growing bigger, I no longer feared for them getting caught. My only fear was that they would miss their window of time.
Okay, here, let's try this. Let's just try a whole bunch of different ways to save this movie.
Yeah.
Bill Foster and Ava, whatever her last name is, are developing their own quantum tunnel, and it's a race to the quantum realm. It's a heist movie, but the object of the heist is Janet.
Yeah. And I could get on board with that.
Yeah.
I think my problem is, and this is not the first time Marvel has fallen to this, but it's too many antagonists.
Yeah. Antagonists. Yeah.
And it was just like, okay, is it a rehash of the last movie? Is it, and I feel like it could have been kept fresher a little bit.
Because we had, in terms of antagonists, we had Ghost, we had Bill Foster, we had Walton Goggins, we had
FBI,
Jim from The Office.
Yeah.
We had FBI. Yeah. It's
in a lot of ways, especially for Scott, who like, regardless of if we think he should be, is the main character of this movie.
There's no direct line of conflict to Scott. Yeah.
And that's what's frustrating.
Yeah.
Is like Scott's only thing he has to worry about is sneaking back home in time to not get caught by Asian Jim from The Office.
Yeah.
Like if he had been entangled up in some other way. Now, don't get me wrong. The scene where Janet sort of possesses Scott was brilliant.
Oh my gosh.
Paul Rudd acted
that was so funny.
Perfect in that scene. But like ultimately his only thing there was to be this sort of tortured Frodo-esque character who couldn't really help in any way other than he had to be the one to do it.
Yeah.
And so like it was kind of frustrating to me.
Well, imagine that movie, The Race of the Quantum Realm, without Scott in it. And then they get to that point where they're like, she's trying to send a message. What do we do? And then Hank Pym goes, I think I might know a guy. And then just cold open on him playing the drums in his house on house arrest. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that's the way that Ant-Man is and should be in the movies.
I agree. And actually that sort of brings me to my super pump of this movie. Cause we're talking too negatively about this movie, especially because I don't dislike it that much.
Yeah.
I want to talk about my super pump, which is Evangeline Lilly.
Yeah. She's great.
As the Wasp, as Hope. I think that she could carry this movie. I think that she could carry an entire franchise of movies alone. Like her action sequences were the best. Her like dialogue pieces were the best. Her moments where she was like running the show or in charge or having intimate time like with her father, like everything was so well done. Yeah. And so my super pump is Evangeline Lilly, the actress, over maybe Hope, the character for this particular movie.
I think that's fair because Hope's character is a little bit
one-sided.
It's just flat.
Yeah. But my hopes are very high for, I didn't even think about that. My hopes are high for a Hope-led installment at some point.
Yeah, I'm just ready to see her with the rest of the Avengers.
Well, honestly, can I tell you the truth? I'm ready to see an Ant-Man and the Wasp movie that's about Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Yeah.
That's my big thing. I get the play on the fact that Hank was also Ant-Man and Janet was also the Wasp.
Yeah.
And so like I get that it was, and we can have that conversation too, but I'm ready for Scott and Hope hoofing it cross country, doing something as Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Yeah.
And relying on each other. And then Louise shows up. That's what I'm waiting for.
Yeah. Yeah. So from here, let's talk about
the end of this second act gets a little funky.
Yeah.
They end up back at Bill's place.
Yeah, because they get captured. That's right. And that's when we find out what Ava's deal is. She's basically in a laboratory accident like a Spider-Man villain.
Yeah. Which like felt weird.
I liked it because this movie's about like the Ant-Man movies have always been about unintended consequences of advanced tech.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's like the log line for these movies, which is why, and I'm gonna go ahead and do it now. My super dump has got to be the Wasp's healing touch thing that she comes back from the quantum realm with.
What was
So
that?
basically, while she's in the quantum realm, her body has evolved or adapted to be able to utilize quantum healing particles, which is what Scott's in there gathering in the post-credits tag.
Yeah.
So she uses these healing particles to, spoilers for the end of this movie, to cure Ghost of her phasing thing, but it's only
not-
temporary.
yeah, it's more
because
like-
they got to keep like re-upping her. It's like a dosage.
Yeah.
Which to me is that's what happens in an X-Men movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
X-Men is about like crazy biological powers, but at the end of the day, we're all humans.
Yeah.
These movies are all about advanced technology doing what humans can't. She's a brilliant scientist. Like, we have something that fits the theme and the world of these two movies.
Yeah.
Like she can come back and say, hey, I spent like however many decades in the quantum realm, so I understand how this stuff works. Let me operate on Ghost.
Yeah. Oh, she says 30 years, so it would have been like the 80s.
Okay. Yeah. So I spent 30 years in the quantum realm. Like, I understand these particles.
Yeah. And I could have gotten on board with that. I agree. Like, as soon as the healing, I think I actually rolled my eyes when the healing touch scene happened.
Yeah. It felt so much like Lucy's magic hug in the Santa Claus 3.
Yeah. Yeah. It sure did.
Which is funny because the first movie shared a lot of similarities with Santa Claus 1.
yeah. And again, here we are.
Here we are back in the confirmed crossover universe. So the Santa Claus 2 tells the story of Santa having to find a wife within a certain number of days or he gets to no longer be Santa Claus.
Right. The desantification process.
Ant-Man 2, Ant-Man and the Wasp tells the story of Scott Lang having to stay in his house for a certain number of days. Otherwise, he doesn't get to keep not being in jail.
Yeah.
So it's just weird.
So it's sort of every movie, if you think about it, is
movie,
really a spin-off
tale as
of
old
the Santa
as
Clauses.
time.
The Santa
But
Claus.
It's Santa Claus. It is weird, though. And maybe in all of this, we're grasping at straws, but at the end of the day, we can do whatever we want here on this show.
Yeah.
It's our podcast.
We own it.
But it is weird that both of the second movies, like after such a similar premise in the first movie, both of the second movies are like on a time-based deadline.
Yeah.
I don't know. Tell me if that's weird.
Hey, if the third one is about wishing he had never been Ant-Man at all.
Or maybe going back in time and resetting some things.
Oh, yeah. Which I do kind of think is where we're heading.
Yeah. Yep.
Not necessarily that that'll be Ant-Man 3, but yeah, I think that's...
So if you're listening live right now, we have just uncovered the secret blueprint of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and it is
the Santa Claus series.
the Santa Claus trilogy.
Yeah. Well, and so speaking of, I actually want to go ahead and rush through the ending of this movie, much like the movie itself did, so that we can talk about that post-credit scene, which might be the most important we've had in about 5 years.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
But let's go ahead and finish up talking about this movie. Essentially, hijinks go crazy.
That's the perfect word for this. It's just hijinks.
It is.
It's light on plot, heavy on oops,
But
like Three Stooges action.
I hugely appreciated the callback to close-up magic at the
Yes.
end when Scott used that tactic to distract Ghost.
Yeah, that was very good.
So that the building could get out. I thought the car chase was fantastic with the vans. Everything involving cars at the end of this movie was so good. The van being chased by the other cars, shooting them up by going small, going underneath, getting big again, giant man skateboarding on the pickup truck, and of course, wasps swing out of a window, swing back into a window to knock out the driver. We saw that in the trailer, and I still couldn't get enough
it's
of it.
so cool.
So that everything about that is so great. And then we kind of get to this part at the end where like it felt like I had to suspend disbelief even more than normal a little bit, because it just felt like everything had a nice perfect bow on it.
Yeah. So here's what I was referencing earlier. Bill and Ava just kind of escape into not even into the night, into the day.
Well, they're let go by like they make the conscious decision to let them go.
Yeah. I didn't love the way that their story ended. And maybe it's just because I don't know if they don't have a place in this narrative or if they're just written poorly.
Well, it didn't feel earned to me to have that moment in the alleyway where they're like, go without me, I'm never leaving you. I was like, oh, that's sweet, I guess.
Okay. Yeah. Cool.
It just felt kind of dull.
Yeah. I don't know. It really did feel like the movie was like, hey, feel something.
Yeah.
You got to feel something.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't think I do.
But I liked that they got everything kind of done. But even still, like the result of victory was that, mom's back.
Yeah.
But that was kind of it though.
Well, and that's the thing. Like this is the problem with setting this movie when it's set.
Yeah.
Like everything that we're like, yeah, that's catharsis. That's the end of this movie is undone by the post-credit scene.
Yeah. Which don't get me wrong. I think I liked the post-credit scene more than anything else in the movie almost.
That's something I realized as I sat down is I was just going into this movie saying, yeah, whatever. Like Ant-Man and the Wasp. Cool. I'm ready for the post-credit scene because I want to know what happens. And I think that's they've kind of future-proofed themselves at the box office. Marvel has by saying like people are going to turn up to this movie, even if what they really care about is what happens in the Avengers movies.
Yep. And so basically we get our nice clean ending. Everybody goes back home and watches a drive-in movie in the backyard.
Just like the ending of Up, they get their fancy house on the beach right next to Paradise Falls.
Yep. And it's sweet. It's a sweet ending. Whatever.
Yeah.
Loved the actual ending of tiny car laptop watching a drive-in and the moth lands. And
who was in the other cars?
I don't think anybody. I think they just set it up to look like a drive-in movie.
Okay.
That's my guess.
Because that's my question. It's like, is that like all his friend? Like this is a weird thing.
Yeah. I think it was just set up to look like a drive-in movie.
Okay.
Is my guess. But we get to the end and we get to this post-credit scene.
Hang on, I'm uncovering what I think might be a plot hole. I'm pulling at this thread. In the first movie, don't they say that you have to be wearing your respirator and a regulator when you shrink?
I think that is correct.
Because there's a whole lot of size changing without a mask or breathing apparatus in this movie.
Yeah.
Which we didn't see in the first one and didn't see in Civil War.
Yeah.
Well, false. This movie's not a documentary.
Bummer, dude. I want to talk about the post-credit scene.
Take me there.
So we arrive on the rooftop of, is that still the same building? Is that the lab?
I think so, probably.
Okay, so we arrive on essentially the rooftop of the lab with Hank and Janet and Hope and Scott.
Yep.
And so Scott is suiting up. They have built a smaller version of the quantum tunnel so that Scott can go in and collect quantum healing particles.
A whole lot of stuff that was just dumped on us at the end of this movie. Which, if you want to go quantum healing particles, why not like have them discover that works whenever Janet comes out of the quantum realm and she's got quantum dust on her and Ghost touches it and solidifies for the first time in her life.
I was expecting her to come out young.
Yeah.
I feel like we should mention that now.
Like young Michelle Pfeiffer?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's what I was expecting, is to be like time works differently there. They made a big deal about that, but she still aged 30 years. So does it really work differently?
I'm not
there?
sure
It was
about
super
that.
weird. Which don't get me wrong. She looks great for like a 70-year-old woman, but
yeah, I do feel that's weird that we went to the trouble of specifically making Janet magic, but now we're going back to the quantum realm because her magic
runs out apparently.
Didn't go. Yeah. Like
So it's
imagine
super
if
weird.
Ghost is trying to grab her to kill her, to take her quantum energy and finds out that she gets that dust on her and she is solidified.
Yeah.
Like, it seems like an easy fix to me.
Same. But Scott's got this canister. It's essentially his Ghostbusters canister to
totally
suck up a ghost, or his Monsters Inc. canister to suck up some laugh energy. But he goes into this quantum tunnel and they go, Scott, are you there? And he's silent for a few moments before he responds, and we get a good laugh in the theater of, oh, you frightened them. You're crazy. And he sucks up some quantum juice and he pulls the cable. He says, honk twice if you want to come out. You know what I mean? And nothing. No response. And he goes, guys, it's not funny. Guys, come on. What's going on? It's not funny. And we cut back to the rooftop where Hank and Janet and Hope have all dissolved in I don't feel so good dust.
Yep.
And that's not great, huh?
So here is my theory.
Yep.
And we're getting into rumor zone about Avengers 4. So if that's not your thing, maybe skip ahead like a couple of minutes. Yeah. And come back. We'll see at the rating. My theory about this is related to casting news. So they have cast an older actress in her like late teens to play Cassie Lang in Avengers 4.
Whoa.
There are also set photos of Robert Downey Jr. looking really, really gray.
Really?
I think that Avengers 4 takes place in a post-snap reality several years in the future.
Yeah.
And we get some great things that I think are foreshadowing for Cassie in this movie, where she says she wants to be a hero.
Yeah.
In the comics, she is a size-changing hero.
That will make me very, very happy.
So I think we're going to see an older, heroic Cassie Lang who knows her dad is trapped in the quantum realm.
Yeah.
And Paul Rudd's been stuck in the quantum realm for
15.
a decade.
Yeah. No, she's not that young, is she? Yeah, I guess a decade would make sense.
Yeah.
I mean, about 19 maybe.
Yeah.
I don't remember what grade she was in, but
Sure.
I think part of what's going to come along with this is, and I can't remember if we talked about it after Infinity War. So again, if this isn't your thing, maybe skip ahead. But my big theory is that everything will be solved by a time warp return to the battlefield at Wakanda right before the snap. Mm-hmm. I think that's how we're going to get our big solve.
Okay, interesting.
I think that's why they recorded these two movies back to back. I think that's how we're going to return to a primary timeline where young Tom Holland can still play young Peter, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I think we're going to have a return back to the primary timeline before Thanos snapped. And my theory is Scott's going to have something to do with it, because he is, as of right now, essentially him and Nebula, I think, are the only two non-original cast Avengers that are sticking around.
That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all of the Phase 1 Avengers plus Nebula, Rocket, and Ant-Man.
Yep. And so I think Ant-Man is going to have some stuff to say.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder, he's got a canister of healing particles.
Uh-huh.
That's Chekhov's particle.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Canister of healing particles, and we know that Doctor Strange's powers somehow access those other realities, other realms. So the quantum realm could easily be one of those. If the big thing is Doctor Strange, who's to say that Doctor Strange, if he is trapped somewhere, and that's what happened to those who got snapped, the snappies, if
they're in the Soul Stone, that's a popular theory.
Someplace. Who's to say that he couldn't warp to the quantum realm, get halfway there, and let Scott pull him all the way out, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see where they go from here, certainly.
Yeah, there's so much of a question in even just reading Infinity Gauntlet from 1991, which is largely the basis. It's where Thanos snaps his fingers and destroys half of reality. It is going to be very difficult for them without Doctor Strange.
It is. It is, which is why I think Captain Marvel is going to play a huge role, because her she will be the most powerful that did not get snapped to dust.
Yeah.
And also, Brie Larson. So
she's great. She's great. Interesting thing is that in Infinity Gauntlet, Adam Warlock says like 3 or 4 times, we can't beat Thanos. He controls quite literally all there is. The only time the Avengers have ever historically defeated him was if he decided he needed to be defeated.
Yeah.
Like essentially,
so if he
got
decided
to turn
he
Thanos.
regretted the snap.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I don't know. That could be really interesting. But
with the depth that they gave Thanos in Infinity War, I could see him saying eventually, seeing the result of what he had done going, it didn't help. I've made a terrible mistake.
Yeah.
It would be interesting. I'm very interested to see what happens.
Yeah. I don't know. That movie's such a big question mark for me. And I went into Ant-Man and the Wasp knowing that it wasn't going to answer questions that I had, but I still really wanted it.
Same.
Like I wanted him. I really thought in the quantum realm, he was about to see Captain Marvel.
I thought so too.
I thought Captain Marvel was going to come out of the back of the van back there and then come out, and the other 3, Hank and Janet and Hope, were going to get snapped away.
Yeah. I was kind of expecting something along those lines, or a cry for help from Doctor Strange or something coming from out of the tunnel. Now the crazy thing is, and I think we're about to rate this movie, but there's only one movie between this and the next Avengers installment.
I know, that's nuts.
It's Captain Marvel,
which means that the Captain Marvel post-credits scene is going to be pretty load-bearing. Yeah, I think, you know what I mean. That's going to be a really important one.
Yep, or not, and then we go into the next Avengers blind.
We don't get another Marvel movie until February of next year.
That is insane.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Is that the longest gap in half a decade?
Longest gap in a while. There used to be one a year in between them.
Yeah.
Like there used to be just like summer movies. You know what I mean? There was a...
That's what I'm saying. In the last 5 years, though, isn't this going to be the longest gap we've had with that one?
We've had 2 a year.
And we normally have one around now and then one around September or October.
Yeah, like a fall one. Yeah, there's not a fall one this year.
Oh, that hurts me.
I know. It sucks.
It's very sad.
Well, That's a different movie, and we're excited for it, but we are not done talking about Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Well, I kind of am. I think it's time to rate it.
Yeah, let's do it.
So we here at Two Chunks and a Hunk have a rating system.
That's not the name of our show.
Sorry, we here at Two Chunks, just the two of us, have a rating system that is perfect. It's the Scientific Cinema Scale trademark, and I'm going to run you through that right now. The best thing we can ever say about a movie is to own it, don't lend it, buy that poster. The next best thing we can ever say about a movie is buy it. The next best thing we can say is to rent it. After that, the next thing we can say about a movie is to stream it. Following that, the next best thing that we can ever say, and second worst thing we can ever say about a movie, is to forget it. You're better off if you just pretend this movie didn't exist. And lastly, the worst thing we can ever say about a movie: God hath forsaken us. So
I'll go first.
yeah.
Ant-Man and the Wasp. Rent it. Very fun movie. I mean, I'm going to end up buying it because this is the first Marvel episode where I haven't mentioned that I own the special edition of all these movies. Which
do you? I didn't know that.
I still do. If you've been listening for a while, don't worry. I didn't sell them. I still have all of them.
Interesting. I had no idea.
I will buy this, but you shouldn't. You should rent it. It's a great movie. It's very fun. Rent it though.
Sure. My rating for this movie is actually going to be also rent it. It has been a ton of fun to watch. I think that it is a great, like, kind of brain dead movie that you can throw on and just like enjoy. But as far as a viable chapter in the MCU overarching meta narrative, I would say that you can tune in at the post-credit scene and call it a day.
I mean, in the same way that you could with the first Ant-Man.
Right, of course.
These have both been relatively standalone.
Of course. But I would say that this is an easy rent it, worth a couple bucks to give it a watch, and then, maybe sit on it for a little bit.
Yeah. It's a good time. And now here's the part of our show, and this is the first episode of Two Chunks Only, so it's a new segment that we're doing called Shout-Outs. Basically, what it is we say your name.
Right. So we want to give a huge shout-out to Vince Kelly. Thank you, Vince.
Thank you, Vince.
Had some kind words to say about us on Facebook. Want to give a big shout-out to Colton Vinner. What up, CV?
Thank you, sir.
Want to say thank you for sending in your pumps and dumps, kind of about life.
Yeah.
Not really so much about a movie, but we will take it.
Hey, your whole life is a movie if you've got a camera.
That's true.
You can take that to the bank.
Didn't he ask us to give pumps and dumps about future movies?
Yeah. So, Colton, if you want to write in pumps and dumps for movies we haven't even seen yet, go for it.
I was going to give you a pump and a dump for a future movie that I have no confirmation that it will exist, but I'm pretty sure it's going to come out. It's a movie called The Paper.
Okay, yeah.
And it's kind of this love story about two star-crossed lovers that work at a newspaper.
Yeah.
I feel like they're going to be played by Chloe Grace Moretz and Tim Robbins. It's going to be like a big age gap, very uncomfortable.
Wow.
And my dump for that movie, my super dump for that movie, actually someday will probably be that age gap is uncomfortable, especially because I think we're still 10 years away. So Tim Robbins is very old. And then
I think if that had come out in 2050, like if that's a summer 2050 movie, that's what we're talking about.
But and then I think maybe my super pump for this movie would probably be just like how good Tim Robbins looks for an 85-year-old at that point. So, thank you, CV, for that question. The next person that we're going to shout out is going to be Claudia Martinez. Thank you, Claudia, for not only your kind words on social media, but also for sending us a private message. Also very kind.
Thank you. We want to round out our shout outs with a big chunky thank you to the fraternity Psi Omega Phi. Yeah, thanks guys. Thanks for shouting us out
on the social media.
And then finally, we want to conclude our shout out segment of the show with a very special thank you to Caleb Moore. Caleb, I know you've been telling us for a while that we just need to pony up and drink the gas that we're given and not wish it was different gas. And we're starting to love that Fast and that Furious gas. And so, Caleb, thank you for always being an advocate for good, yummy gas.
Delicious. We are all Paul Walker today.
Well, be sure to tune in next week. We are canceling this show right now. We're not going to go back. We're going to go back to our old format. We tried it. We're going to go back to the old three boys talking into microphones about cars.
That's right. Carter will be back next week for us to talk about the movie you know and love, Fast Five.
Fast Five. I couldn't remember what it was called.
I think that's right, but I also just kind of pulled it out.
It's the 5th one of the car ones.
Yeah.
And we'll be talking about it. We'll be watching it. We would love it if you would watch with us. And if you want to get your name on the show, you can send us a pump and dump through our website, which is twochunksandahunk.com. You can hashtag official chunky on social media, or realistically at this point, just do anything and we'll shout you
Colton
out.
Vinner just kind of emailed us, but it wasn't really about anything.
Yeah.
And, he still got
you
a
just
shout
heard,
out.
we all know his name now.
So there we go.
This could be you.
So just kind of do anything, and we'll basically shout you out at this point. We've been so thrilled to talk about these car movies. I can't wait to get back to car business. And if you're thrilled to get back to car business too, what we would love to ask you to do for us, a huge favor, but very simple. If you could go and subscribe to our show on whatever podcast aggregator you use to listen, and if you could maybe leave us a rating and a review, say something good or something terrible.
Either way,
the good one.
Either way, we'll shout you out.
That's true. So thank you so much for listening. That's gonna be it for us today.
Yeah, wow. And just candidly, Jordan, how do you feel like the first ever episode of Two Chunks only went?
Man, I hated this so much.
It's so weird.
I hated every second we recorded this.
We touched feet under the table right before we started recording and just kind of made eye contact about it and realized that, yep, this is our day now, sitting by ourselves, pretending someone is listening to us.
I haven't looked at Doge since we touched feet. I'm going to do it now for the first time in roughly an
3,
hour.
2, 1,
it
go.
was
Oh
terrible.
gosh, you just looked at me. Yeah, it's rough.
Yeah, it feels even sillier than normal to sit here as though we are talking to an audience when we're just alone in a room.
Yeah, I desperately hope that someone is listening. Otherwise, this has been the most uncomfortable hour of my life.
Well, either way, hallelujah, it's done.
Yep.
Make sure you tune in next week for Fast Five, and for Two Chunks, I'll just the two of us. I'm Jordan Wonders.
And I'm Doge.
Goodbye.
See you next time.